Clinton.
I'm Hillary.
And welcome to Black Atlantic. How are you today, Hillary? How's your week been?
I'm good. This week has been another crazy week. We were interviewed for a few different things that are going to be coming out I think in the near future from different media stuff, which was really sick. I was in a panel yesterday and spoke for an hour and a half about how to monetize your social media presence, and got to talk about our podcast and how I got to be a part of this and how we do this and like the opportunities that we've had. So that was really fun. What else happened this week? This week is the first week that I get to finally start to relax. The play that I was writing is finally done. And if fingers crossed, I get to go home, I get to hear it. So now I finally have some time off for that, which has been really cool. There's been a lot of other Black History Month stuff going on, I guess. I feel like Black History Month's always crazy and we get asked to participate and do a lot of things. I think that my next CBC interview will be coming up shortly. Yours is next week, right?
Tuesday.
Yours will be
the day that this.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, go also listen to
check
that.
the website and you can find the link for what would have already been aired, I believe.
Yeah. And other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Mainly, I was.
Which is why I was trying to think about how I was before we started recording today, because you're sitting here like, how am I? What's that?
Well, I knew that I was going to mention the panel, and then I remembered that we had been, contacted by different media stuff and wanted to shout us out. But yeah, it was announced that I'm now a freelance writer for Narcity as well. And so if you go to Narcity's website, you can find an article that I wrote about Toronto braiding salons and how that's helped me with my Black identity. After the panel, I went and had some steak frit at a nice restaurant on the Danforth, which is my neighborhood. And that's really been about it. Oh, I ended my therapy. Sorry, I'll add that too, just from a mental health positive note. I did probably 45 hours of intensive sobriety therapy through a program that is in Ottawa when I was living there with my dad, and I finished. So like rehab, but not because I was home, but super intense. There was a lot of crying and I'm done. So now I go about my life. And that's been my week. How about you?
Wow, that's a hard act to follow. My week has not been as eventful. It's been a lot of the same, salon back on the go. Things are going well. I'm feeling great. I have a good energy. Yeah, we did a number of interviews today, this week for our new podcast. That's going really well. We're getting a lot of feedback. Working on the house. The weather's warming up, which is amazing. And yeah, just having lots of fun with fam. Went for a great after dinner today in Sackville, which was really nice, like a late lunch at this restaurant called The Painted Pony. Super stylish, super classy. Didn't even know it existed. Huge stage, like just really well laid out. And I'm looking forward to our chat today. So that is really, there's probably more new with me, but I can't remember.
That's how I felt. I was like, what happened this week? Today was my first day, off in forever. And I fell asleep on my couch and I'm like 10 pages away from finishing the African anthology. And I think that wiped my whole brain of anything I did all week until I started speaking about it.
Really good book. Yeah, I've been reading it a bit more and I can't wait to see what else they do. We had Greg Frankson on the show last week. So looking forward to that. And also people can watch your Unity Link Up social media chat on our page as well. You might have to scroll back a bit. But yeah, people can watch the live if you want to learn more about social media monetization and how to dress appropriately on Instagram. Okay. Anyways, people will, if they listen, they'll understand what that is.
Yeah.
For today, though, we have two topics that we're going to be talking about. The first is a conversation regarding and centered around Black History Month, how it's been for us, what it means to us, should it even still exist, and if it should, in what format should it evolve into in 2022? And then, woot woot, the thing that's really been in the news this month, overshadowing everything else, is the Freedom Convoy. So we can't help but get into that again because it's on every news feed, it's on everyone's mind, it's coming out of everyone's mouth every day. A lot of people from our first episode thought that we had a really, really, really balanced view of it, and that was only 1 week in. So go back and check that out, episode 1, and let's really get into it. Are you ready?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, we are in the midst of Black History Month right now, February 2022. And this is the time of year in Canada where traditionally kids in school learn, they learn that Rosa Parks did not sit at the back of the bus and that there was a person named Martin Luther King Jr. And that's about the extent of what Black History Month has been for a lot of Canadians growing up here in Canada. We are working with organizations that are trying to change that, but that's still a long road moving forward. Black History Month had its origins in 1926 when a historian named Carter Woodson, who was the son of former slaves, founded a week celebrating the accomplishments of African Americans. In the 70s, it became official in the States. In 1995, it became official in Canada. And it's supposed to be a time of year traditionally. Well, I'll read a quote of why he set it up. He set it up because he felt that African American contributions were overlooked, ignored, and suppressed by the writers of history textbooks, which is really interesting because I was just sharing on my Facebook page this week a book called 1984 that deals exactly with that, the suppression of history, as well as a number of other things. And he also founded it because he felt that there has never been proper credit given to Black people for any sort of contribution or progress of mankind whatsoever. And as you dive into different Black history facts, you find that that is so far from the truth. So that was the origin story of Black History Month, and we're going to have a back and forth discussion about how we feel about that and where it should go. But Hillary, I mean, those are the stats and the facts. What is Black History Month meant to you, and how is this month going?
I mentioned it on the CBC interview that'll be coming up, that for me, because of school, it was just really awkward. One of 5 Black kids in my school, I say that all the time, and being the only one in my class, I think at one given time until probably 10th or 11th grade. It just felt like a very weird spotlight on me, kids reading To Kill a Mockingbird and then turning around and staring at me while they were given permission to say the N-word without ever really diving into etymology, understanding, or history around the word. Teachers using it as well, and basically just saying well, it's the truth of the text, it's what's in the text, so we're going to say it. And so it was always just really awkward and uncomfortable. I feel that New Brunswick has definitely, in the school system, has participated in history erasure or had never taught Black histories properly until, as you and I both know, we hope to make that change. So up until for me, it was just always that way, and I'd only really known about it and heard about it through the lens of the school system. I don't remember there ever being events or flag raisings or anything when I was in school or growing up. Granted, there wasn't really social media at the time to connect with the community of Moncton in the way that there is today. And so I could just have not had that knowledge. And I don't know what was going on at the university campus that has such a more diverse Black community, and definitely did when I was growing up. But really, it just felt like this was the only time we learned about Black history in school, and everyone would stare at me because I was the only Black person in the room. This month, I would say it's going really well. I think you and I would both agree that it was started chaotic, launching Black Atlantic, so much crazy stuff at the beginning. I feel like it's finally petering off. Of course, there's a big boom of events at the beginning to commemorate it, and then I I feel like it's a bit of a struggle to keep the momentum until the end of the month. And we do want there to be a celebration throughout the whole month. It's not just February 1st flag raising and then leave the Black people to their business the rest of the month. It should be a 28-day long celebration, especially since you only give us 28 days. One of my favorite things you ever pointed out was that it was the shortest month of the year. And now I think that every single time. I would say that I feel like there's good reflection this month. I'm enjoying the events that there have been. That being said, I do feel because of this podcast and the work that we're doing, I definitely feel more connected to the Black community than ever before, especially with the pandemic and social media allowing for so many virtual events. I feel like it's really hard to not see something to participate in. There's 3 work-related virtual events that I'm going to be attending. There's my ability to attend some in New Brunswick, some in Ontario. So I would say it feels like it's bumping this year, but again, also apparently Max, who's also Black and white, wants to just chime in about Black History Month because he participates.
So cute. Yeah, I felt a lot of what you were just saying now, actually, because Black History Month, this month seemed to start off with a bang, as it kind of always done. But I also feel that this is only the second Black History Month since the murder of George Floyd. And I feel like a lot of its relevance and importance is already being brushed under the rug. I feel like Black History Month always kind of feels more like Black History Day nowadays, or Black History Week. Like you see a slew of articles being put out that first week. And I will, when I'm done, get your feedback as to whether or not you are seeing a bunch of articles in the media. But then after that, I feel like it just fizzles out really quickly, which is a big problem. I have noticed a lot more panels this year in New Brunswick than ever before. I am seeing a lot of workshops and endeavors by individual organizations to have guest speakers, and I've caught a couple sessions and they're really great, but I don't see much effort from the federal government, local governments, provincial governments, or even the media to cover it. And I think there is a really big reason for that. And we'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but it's really sad. It makes me ask, I have 2 questions and I'm going to ask you both of them. So Black History Month, I've heard the mantra for a long time that, Black history didn't start with slavery, and that Black history, is more than that. And Canadian history, for one, Black history is just history, especially here in Canada. But I mean, here I guess I've got 3 questions. No, I'll bring it back to 2. Sorry, should I cut this out? I don't know. Okay.
No, keep going.
So there's a lot of talk that Black history, didn't start with slavery.
Yeah.
But maybe it did, because a lot of the people who we interview from Africa, we've been hearing this repeated theme of like, I didn't even know I was Black until I came to North America and they told me. So maybe Black history is the history of Black people in North America. Maybe Africans aren't Black, maybe they're Africans, maybe they're Senegalese or Somalian or Nigerian, and maybe that is a separate African history, and maybe Black history is the stories of what's happened here. What are your thoughts about that? I guess that, and also we can get right into, isn't Black history just Canadian history here in Canada?
I think that, like, for me, I always felt that Black History Month was a month to celebrate Black people who had like earned the right to have Black History Month because they didn't necessarily know their history. There's a collective group of Black people that cannot necessarily trace their lineage back to specific countries or cultures because of the transatlantic slave trade. I've never felt that Black History Month necessarily spoke to my family that's in Senegal, because they were never, there's no history of slavery in my family. They came here for education. They never came here in any forced methods, and I'm very thankful for that. So for them, like in the family chat, they were never blowing anything up on the first, being like, hey, it's Black History Month and kudos to all of us for having melanin. They freaked out about Senegal winning the African Soccer Cup. And that's been the height of the family chat this month. I really see it as something more for North American Black people, or Black people who maybe cannot trace their lineage past slavery and being bought and being like basically owned or a possession. That might apply to, well, I mean, that probably does apply to Europe as well, and this is where we know that Hillary doesn't have all of her Black history facts. But I've never seen it as an all Black person month, because you're right that a lot of guests have pointed that out, that you only realize you're a minority or feel that you are Black, and comes with a negative connotation in places where you are a minority. In Africa, I feel like I'm about to misspeak because I just remembered South Africa with the apartheid, but a lot of the countries in Africa, you are not a minority, and therefore you don't have to, I think, own it in the same way. And in that respect, I think that Black history is definitely in part Canadian history, but I would say that there's a problem with that statement for me, because Canadians don't want to own Black history as their own. And Canadian history really, for me, starts with Indigenous people before Black people ever came here, before colonization. And so for me, Canadian history is Indigenous history. I think Black Canadian history is a thing that should be spoken about and exists, but Canada as a whole has participated in so much erasure. Even that is a hard claim to make. I think there's Black history as a whole that involves slavery, immigration, moving around, labor, work, building the backs of these two countries, Canada and America. And then there's Canadian history, which involves the livelihood of, I would say, more so Indigenous people in my mind, before we get into the years of colonization and Acadians. And to that point, I just want to say, I forgot something that happened this week, but I had a focus group working with Parks Canada about diversifying the province house. And I just want to say that it was sort of an example of the government claiming they want to be better, but they don't really want to be better. And you would be surprised at how much of it was problematic, especially during Black History Month. And there was a lot of erasure. And I was very proud to be part of the group signaling. I literally at one point said the words caucasity, but just while we're highlighting Black History Month, like the Caucasian audacity, the audacity of white people to speak in such a way.
I'm glad you explained that, because
Yeah.
that could have gone a lot of ways.
Yeah, the caucasity was real. And so I just want to highlight that while we're speaking about Black History Month and where it could go, the government does still like to claim that they're doing work, and they are still not doing the work and are still participating in erasure for museums presently. So a lot of room to grow for Canada.
Definitely a lot of room to grow for Canada. And I'm glad you mentioned colonization, because I think while many African countries didn't suffer the effects of slavery, where that was mostly a grab from Western countries in Africa, I know a lot of African countries weren't, but I think a lot of African countries were colonized as well, which, like you said, with the Indigenous people over here, creates a whole other form of trauma and literal genocide and destruction of families and economic sanctions. And so while they still should kind of maybe not Black like we consider ourselves over here in North America, and they can't necessarily claim slavery in their family history. Just a quick answer before I go on: was Senegal ever colonized? I know there's many countries that they tried to colonize it and fail. Like I believe Somalia or Ethiopia, they couldn't win, they couldn't take them over.
I think so, but I'm not
Okay,
sure, but I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, so there was colonization that took place in Africa. I remember we had a guest on the show, on our old show a couple months ago, named Alfred. Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so yeah, colonization, like if we
French,
look at indigenous people in Canada, colonization has its own lingering, lasting effects on, similar to, if not the exact same as slavery.
the
Um,
French conquest of Senegal started in 1659 with the establishment of Saint Louis, Senegal, followed by the French capture of the island of Gorée, which is also where some of my people are from. And I don't know where I was seeing this, but I saw a map. I might have been in because of the book on race and storytelling that actually showed like how they divided up all of Africa in between, or was that with you that we
no,
discussed this? It
no,
was you keep talking about Alfred and I'm going to find what I'm picturing.
sure, yeah, no, absolutely. It was really shocking to hear him talk about erasure over there. And I apologize that I don't remember at the moment what country he originated from, but it was shocking to learn that growing up in class, all the history textbooks were actually from France, and they didn't ever talk about uh, the African history of that country. The history textbooks sort of started with the colonization of France, calling France the saviors of the people,
Yeah.
and sort of portraying his own ancestors as like, I don't know if I'm throwing in words here, brutal, uncivilized people that
Mhm.
needed to be saved. And I was just thinking of the impact that would have had on a 99% Black
Yeah.
um, educational system growing up like that, and being taught all these untrue things about yourself that he's lucky enough to have learned about as he got older, but a lot of people from that country didn't. I found it really interesting, your comment. Yeah, like, so you do feel that there is Canadian history, and it started with Indigenous history, and Black history is kind of a separate thing, whereas I believe that um, because of the sort of lack of real interest that I've been feeling around Black History Month most of my life, other than last year, um, it really just should be integrated into the education system on a constant basis. It should be revamped completely, burn the history section of education down, and implement true Black history among the ages. Whatever age you're studying of Canadian
Mhm.
history, you have to take that from the Black context as well, because again, while Canada is very multicultural, Black people have since day one, before other immigrants came here, not by will, but Black people have played an integral part of the building of this country. So
Mhm.
I think Black history needs to be integrated into Canadian history. And I think this month should be used for something else, which we'll finish off with in a second. But you found the information you were looking for. What is it?
Yeah, so what I'm looking for is it was an event called the Scramble for Africa, which was also called the Berlin Conference of 1884. And it's where all of these countries came together in Berlin to literally decide how they were going to divide up Africa. And I will show you wait, maybe I won't show you because of technology,
If you hold it
but
back a bit, I think it'll show.
Mm,
Nope, it won't.
no, okay. So it's a map of Africa divided by a series of colors, and these are the countries that would own territory. So Belgian, Britain, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish empires would all divide up all of Africa except for Ethiopia and Liberia. And the intra 46th Meridian East territories. Those all remained independent, and then Ethiopia was invaded and occupied by Italy in 1936. So like every country at one point except for those three ended up being invaded by all of the other European territories that were close to them. um so all of Africa has been invaded or taken over at some point. And I was reading, as I mentioned before, the book on race and storytelling by Essie Edugian, and I know that um, it has had different influences in terms of I don't think in a lot of them the Black people ended up necessarily being the minority, but influences on like language and speech and food and interracial children and infrastructure and definitely things like that. So there's still heavy impacts that this has had on the world and on the continent of Africa as we know it.
Wow. Um, it's
And
just
that's not
wild,
something
the
that's
impact.
taught. That's not something that's
No,
taught.
no, I mean, thank for all the annoyances of the internet and the polarization and the
Yeah.
fact that this okay, maybe I'm talking about us, but anybody can, you know, voice their opinion on the internet these
Yeah.
days, regardless of what they say or their knowledge or education level. Everyone just gets a voice. It's so nice that we have access to the truth when it's available, and we don't just
Mhm.
have to refer to controlled textbooks that were
Yeah.
written by people in power anymore. But
Mhm.
so Ethiopia was not colonized in Africa, which reminds me, interestingly, of the Maroons in Jamaica,
Mhm.
which was a group of people who were brought there during slavery, escaped right away, and they were never able to overcome defeat or enslave or capture these people again. And I should probably write a blog about that one day, because it's a really interesting story that's not
Yeah.
talked about often. How the Britons, even like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, had to form an agreement with these people called the Maroons, who escaped in Jamaica, because they had to form a land agreement hundreds of years ago, because they literally could not colonize them after they
Good.
successfully brought them to Jamaica. Yeah, it's a cool story. Um, I still think we should have a month to celebrate,
Mhm.
and I will correct myself. Actually, a lot of people complain that they gave us the shortest month of the year, but it was Carter Woodson who chose February to celebrate African Heritage Month when it first started, because it was the birthday of two people he really looked up to. Abraham Lincoln, who it turns out probably maybe wasn't as good as we are taught. Yeah, exactly. And another sort of Black leader of his time in the 1920s, that it was his birthday in February. So that's why
Okay.
it's still the shortest month of the year, and it's not given the attention it needs. But I can't continue to blame them for for doing it in February, because it was a Black person that started it.
Fair enough.
Um, what should we do with Black History Month? Like, if well, so my opinion is that
Mhm.
Black history should be year round. It should be Canadian history. So it might be hard for you to answer this question. Do you feel then that we should continue to have Black History Month as is, and just focus more on it, or what should Black History Month be in the future moving forward? Because, like we said, there is very easy access to information,
Mhm.
and we can find it anywhere. And they don't do a good job of teaching it in the schools right now. So what should we do with Black History Month?
I think first and foremost, and I agree with what you were saying before about sort of like haha burning the textbooks, but I think that that's, some of the work we're doing with the school department is to move to a place where Black history is just integrated all the time. Like when you're speaking about history, about innovators, about artists, about people who've done amazing work in technology, it's not hard to throw a Black person in the list, an Asian person in the list, someone from India in the list, and make it a diversified list or roster of people that you feature in all of these classes, and stop making everything so white centric. Part
Mhm.
of the work that I was doing with Parks Canada, and what I took issue with, without spilling the beans on the whole task, is that it was a reciting of Canadian history about Confederacy, but spoken still through a white lens. So it was a white person listing things about colonization, but then still trying to say why it was good because it was from a white perspective. And spoiler alert, I said, why not use an indigenous perspective, since they were here before the white people, and like don't even make it Black centric. Why would you do that? I think to answer your question, Black History Month, and I think we're like a little, we were going to get into this anyway, should sort of be about Black futures and not Black history. But I think, and I hope that this is happening less anyway, that we're not only using Black History Month to teach Black history. First of all, I do think Black history needs to be taught all the time. And then I think Black History Month needs to be less about, first of all, history from a traumatic lens, which is what I'm talking about on my CBC spot with Stacey Darku, because that can incite more trauma and lead to, bigger issues and microaggressions. And then, you've got white people asking us to talk about slavery and things that are really painful, without any of the like aftercare or compassion or knowledge that a therapist might have onboarding something that serious and that difficult. I think a Black History Month might just be the wrong title. I don't know if it should be necessarily about only the future, but I think for Black people, it has always been a celebration. White people see it as we're going to teach you about Black people now, often also to the Black people in the room, or Black people have often been put on the spot to teach people about their history. But for Black people themselves, I think it's a coming together, it's a celebration, it's finding like-minded people like you and sharing knowledge, not just about the past, but about the future, about our goals, about our ambitions, about where we're coming from, both historically and from perspective standpoints. And so I it should be like Black Joy Month or Black Party Month, or like it shouldn't be about the past or the future. It should just be a celebration of food and fashion and culture and like-mindedness from all of the different places where we all come from to occupy whatever land we're standing on that is celebrating that month. I don't think it should just be about the slave trade and Viola Desmond and all these people who got us here. They should have their moments, but it should be about like, teach me about how to make your food, teach me about Senegalese mafe and about the prince from Nigeria and how you even get them to Canada to be able to sell them, and your ideas and your innovators and your people, and then where you want to take that. That's what it should be, in my opinion.
I love that. I didn't know you were going to say any of that, to be honest, because we very lightly pre-discuss our episodes, of course, in a responsible way before we get started.
Mhm.
But yeah, like Black Joy Month, Black Party Month. I love those concepts. They're really exciting. I personally feel that, yeah, Black History Month shouldn't have a focus on slavery. The
Mhm.
media used to be really guilty in taking Black History Month to just remind Black people and white people um, how much we were oppressed and enslaved and
Mhm.
beaten. And it's like stories of like shambles and you're not allowed to read and getting whipped and stuff like that. And I don't find that helpful. I think Carter Woodson, when he created African Heritage Week, as he did back in the day, his intention was to show accomplishment, show joy, show success, and stuff like that. And you can find those things in history, and we should look to history for those things, especially if they're not being taught throughout the year. But I think what would be more beneficial would be to spend the month focusing on current achievements. I think would be more financially and economically beneficial to Black people to focus on what people are doing in the here and now, what organizations are out there making big progress, what movements are being made. People in business highlight people in business, highlight people in all factors of life who are Black, and show their strengths. I think that is more inspiring to children, to show them what Black people are accomplishing now and plans for the future, what they plan to accomplish. We all know, and the listeners may not know, that after George Floyd was murdered, numerous corporations and companies and government agencies made sweeping, huge pledges to instigate reform and change in the marketing, in hiring practices, employment, in donating to organizations. And the data came out barely a year later that less than 1% of those promises were fulfilled.
Mhm.
These were just PR stunts done in a moment in which America and the world was trembling in fear, not knowing what was going to happen next, with the mass support of the Black Lives Matter marches and protests taking place. And no one acted on anything, or at least less than 1% did. All these huge sweeping promises. Yeah, like so Aunt Jemima got renamed, but like nothing really happened. I think it would be really great to have 1 month a year where it was like an accountability session for all the governments, all the organizations, all the corporations who have made promises to do better, to like show the data, show the stats, show the data, show the numbers. I think you and I can really agree that statistics and feedback and analytics and data and being able to be accountable for what is happening within societies and organizations and groups, it needs to take place. um, I don't, this is a pipe dream for sure. I can't foresee a month in which corporations who make promises to better the quality of life for Black people would ever come to the table and prove that they've done something. But that is one of my ideas for what Black Futures, Black History Month could be Black Joy Month,
Mhm.
maybe just like Being Black Month, should be. Those are my finishing thoughts on it. Do you have anything you want to add? I will let readers know that a lot of this conversation we're having so far is based on a blog that I wrote a few months ago, and that will be re-uploaded to the our new blackatlantic.ca website in the near future. It'll be kind of in the archives section, so you can go back and look at that if you want to listen to more of the thoughts on Black History and Black Futures Month. But any finishing thoughts on the month, Hillary?
Well, your comments about the accountability just reminded me of some of the conversation I had yesterday at that Unity Link Up panel where we were talking about that even how companies during Black History Month will push to have, Black influencers and, will really ramp up that content as well. And then as soon as it's March 1st, they're back to posting more white typical influencers, and they'll also sort of just drop those partnerships as well, and how that like it's really every single aspect is much more difficult. And it did also make me think of when Sasha Exeter, who is a Canadian athlete, influencer, who had sort of taken down Jessica Mulrooney, wife of Brian Mulrooney, son of former prime minister, for misusing a Martin Luther King quote during Black History Month. And then all of the people that were backing Jessica Mulrooney turned around and offered Sasha the same like deals in influencing. And it's just this very weird accountability would be really, really nice, because I think a lot of corporations offer Black people the scraps that they don't offer white people, or sort of a secondhand, I don't know, serving of opportunity, when we want to be still, chosen first, and not as a token, not because we fit a diversity quota, but because what we actually do is being valued and is interesting. And if you're going to say that you're doing these things as a corporation, even if it's because someone was murdered by the police, you should still do it. Don't say that you're going to do it, and then the minute that it's no longer in the news, pretend that you didn't make those statements. And I think
Yeah.
that this month should supersede and be more than that for corporations. I think it should just be a grand celebration. But basically, it should be lit. February should just be lit.
Love it. Black
That's
lit
it.
month. Black lit
Black
month
lit
in
month.
February.